Am I pretty yet? What is up, nerds? That was mean. Writers aren't always nerds. They can be social, they can be fun-loving, they can be... Shit, now I'm just using archetypes. Forget everything I just said because archetypes are very bad. Or are they? And that's exactly what we're discussing today. I haven't done a lot of writing advice videos recently. I've been moving mostly to skits, and I feel like that's because the writing advice that I feel confident in giving to others comes from a very small pool. I'm young, and at this age, I clearly don't know a lot about writing, and I understand that. But there are some times that I'll go back to my old writing and take a look at it and go, oh shit, did I really write this? Was I really this bad? And like every writer, when I find issues in my old writing, I'm gonna want to fix them and prevent them from happening in the future, so I do extensive research on them. Which is why today I'm giving advice about character archetypes, something that I've seen a lot, done a lot, and studied a lot. So let's start with the basics. You know character archetypes. They're things like the hero, the mentor, the villain, the caregiver, the innocent, the outlaw, the jester. And I know these sound like fantasy terms, but you can use them in the context of almost any genre. Think about a book set in a high school setting. You've got the main character, the hero, you've got the bully, which is the villain. There's an older student or teacher who's always there to give advice for the main character, and that's the mentor of the story. You also have the parent or caregiver who is there to care for the hero and help them along their character arc. There's the class clown, aka the jester, or the naive girl who just moved from another school, aka the innocent, or the bad boy, aka the outlaw, whose only goal is to rise against the oppression of the school. My point is that these archetypes are everywhere. We've seen them for years. We know them by heart, and as writers, we try to avoid them. Or do we? I think the best advice I can give when it comes to archetypes is to just know when you're using them. Be aware of the stereotypes and the tropes that surround each archetype and use that knowledge to your advantage. Let's discuss 3 different examples. The first is a side character. This is a person who is only in 2 to 3 chapters of your book. They really don't need a whole character arc, they just need to deliver information and get out. The question is, should you use an archetype in this scenario? And the answer is yes. Now I'm not talking one of the big ticket archetypes like a hero or a villain. I'm talking one of the smaller ones, like the jester, the nonconformist, or the citizen, aka your regular Joe Schmo. Make them something that the reader will recognize, disregard, and move on. Don't spend your time delving into the psyche of this side character. Just name them the class clown, or the popular girl, or the school principal, and move on. Now I'm not saying you shouldn't add other traits to these side characters. I'm just saying that if you base them in a well-known archetype, you can help the reader understand them quickly and keep the story moving. Now let's move on to the next example, which is the main character. Should you use an archetype with this one? I would argue almost never. Isn't your MC the hero? That's an archetype! Well, yes, but I would argue that the archetype of hero comes with very specific tropes. Hero is courageous, fights evil, and wants justice. Not every MC is going to exhibit these traits. It's fine to start out your main character as an outlaw or a Joe Schmo or even a hero, but if that's where your character development ends, you're gonna have a big problem. In order to give your character depth, you have depth. Oh my gosh. Not death. Don't kill your main character unless you want to. In order to give your character depth, you have to give them more traits, inner struggles, and goals beyond the archetype. Hell, why not combine archetypes? Take part of one, part of another, and then, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew together. In short, if you're reading your novel and you realize that your character is confined to a very archetypal box, it might be time for some major revisions. Now I'm sure you know where I'm going with this last category, and that is secondary characters. These are the villains, the mothers, the love interests, and the best friends. And this is also the hardest category when it comes to knowing when to use archetypes. Should you? The internet and teachers alike can't seem to decide on an answer here. On the one hand, creating archetypal characters makes it easy for the reader to understand and relate to the story. After all, they've seen these characters before, and they know what to expect. On the other hand, many argue that this is how we arrive at stereotypes. We all know the artsy, anti-mainstream kid who smokes under the bleachers. We all know the comic relief that doesn't contribute to the mission, but comes along so we can crack a joke every now and then. And, for the love of God, we all know the loyal and trustworthy best friend who has zero life outside of the main characters. As you can see with these examples, the original archetypes have now become stereotypes, which is basically the lazy route for authors. So, should you use archetypes with your secondary characters? The most convincing answer that I've seen is yes, to a point. It might be helpful to start the story off by describing your young character as innocent and naive. This helps ground the reader in something they already know, and it can be imperative to getting your story off the ground without confusing the audience. But at some point, it comes time to push past the archetype and make the character your own. This is when you create unique appearances and defining traits and character arcs and colorful personality and all the fun things in between. This is when it's time to let the young, innocent character play a prank, or wield an axe, or at least not fall for every single con man in their path. To sum up everything, archetypes were created for a reason. Once upon a time, they gave stories a predictable shape. But in the modern day, with tropes knocking on every door, it is important to be aware of the places where archetypes fall short of complexity. So use them to your advantage. Just don't overuse them. So that is all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is the last installment of my whole series on character personality. This was something that I started at the very beginning of my channel, and so it's very fun to finally wrap it up. I'll be linking the full playlist down below in case you want to learn anything about Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or motivation. Those are things that I've talked about before. However, I must admit those videos aren't great. I made them like 2 years ago, so please do not judge them, but I still stand by the information in them. I think it is good advice for if you want to know more about character creation, because that is one of the few things I can actually give advice on. I've done a lot of research on characters and character creation, personality tests, things like that, so yeah, check that out down below. And also, if you have not submitted to reviewing your stories, I talk about this all the time, but I really want you guys to submit. That is 5,000 words of a short story, novel, anything you want. All the links are down below. You can email it to me or submit it over my Wattpad book. So I'll be reviewing your story in a video and sending you a full review as well. And until next time, may the gods of plot be ever on your side. Well, isn't your MC the hero? That's an archetype, bitch! The hero is courageous, fights justice, and wants evil. Wait, no! Shit, I knew it was wrong as I was saying it.